Hey Bears fans, if you want to see Justin Fields get some reps with the ones, both in practice, but especially in this third preseason game against the Titans, all you got to do is like this video. Hey, if we get anything less than 800 likes, I guess you want to see Andy Dalton all season long, and nobody wants that. So hit that thumbs up icon if you want to see number one get reps with the ones on Saturday. And with that being said, jam-packed show, so stay tuned. I'm your host, Harrison Graham. Today's episode of Chicago Bears Now is presented by Magic Spoon. Get back in the cereal game for $5 off your first order at magicspoon.com/bears. I'm a huge fan of the cocoa flavor, the peanut butter as well. Those are my two favorites. High-protein cereal that is absolutely delicious, and you can get $5 off. 0 grams of sugar, by the way. magicspoon.com/bears. A link will be in the comments and in the description. All right, let's get into today's Bears Rumors Roundup. Toward the end of the show, we'll get into some injury news. Justin Fields, should he start against the Titans in preseason game number 3? For Smoking Jays, this is a no-brainer in my opinion, and that's why the origin comes from me. This is my idea. I'm sure other people have this idea as well, but this should be obvious. Justin Fields should start for the Chicago Bears against Tennessee in preseason game number 3. He's primarily worked with the second stringers and the third stringers throughout camp, throughout the preseason. He's gotten a couple of first-team reps, but certainly not that many. Dalton continues to get those, which is fine mostly in practice if they're going to stick to the game plan of starting him in week 1, which is what Matt Nagy continues to preach, that Dalton is the week 1 starting quarterback for the Bears. But here's when it gets sticky for me, and we'll flash the quick quote on screen here. We need to see him in the regular season in terms of evaluating Andy Dalton, who obviously hasn't gotten much going in these preseason series that he has had so far. If that is the case for Nagy and Andy Dalton, then why does he need to play against the Titans? If it's a foregone conclusion that Andy Dalton will start week 1, then start Justin Fields against Tennessee. Don't play Dalton. What is a few more series going to do with the starters against Tennessee in the third preseason game? He's had Hall of Camp with the starters. Sure, some guys have been banged up. He's been in this league for 10-plus years. Why do I need to see another quarter and a half of Andy Dalton against Tennessee? Play Justin Fields with the starters on Saturday. That is what I would do. I would start Fields. I would play him the entire first half, see what happens, and then let Nick Foles wrap up the preseason with some backups, and then you go on and get ready for the Rams after that game. That is what I would do. I would not play Dalton this Saturday if it's already decided that he will start and that the evaluation really only starts in the regular season. If that is your processing, then play your rookie quarterback on Saturday in a game. That doesn't matter because it is the preseason. Should Justin Fields start against Tennessee? I think it's obvious. Type Y for yes, type N for no. I would absolutely start him on Saturday. We'll make this the pinned comment on today's video. So should Justin Fields start against Tennessee, give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no. And if you look at the comparison between Fields and between Dalton, it's kind of up and down for both these guys. Fields overall, I would say, has been a little bit better. He's certainly played against lesser competition, as most teams have gone to their backups once he has checked into these games. Andy Dalton didn't play much in the first preseason game, but he went 3 and out a couple of times. Only big play he's hit was that 73-yard touchdown pass to Rodney Adams, which was probably a better catch than it was a throw. So comparing side by side, I certainly get the frustration on why Bears fans want to see more Justin Fields, which is why he should start on Saturday. It's just don't play Dalton in this game. He's going to be your week 1 starter. That's fine. I'm okay with that until Justin Fields is 100% ready. But we need Fields to get reps with Allen Robinson, with Darnell Mooney, behind the starting offensive line. A lot of Fields' reps in this last preseason game weren't even that valuable because the O-line couldn't block anybody. He was running for his life right off the snap. So for Smoking Jays, he should start against Tennessee. It's as simple as that. Will that happen? I doubt it. I bet Andy Dalton will start and get more reps with the ones. Today's show is presented by Magic Spoon. The benefits of this cereal are absolutely fantastic. 13 grams of protein per serving. It's sweet, it's delicious, but 0 grams of sugar. It's childlike cereal for grown-ups because you're not going to get fat and those bad fatty acids in your digest there if you go ahead and eat Magic Spoon. It's not like the mainstream cereal where there's tons of sugar in there, tons of fatty stuff in there as well. It's delicious, tons of flavor, blueberry, cinnamon. I'm a big fan of the cocoa cereal. That's what I rep this morning when I crush a cereal as my breakfast replacer. Get back in the cereal game with Magic Spoon and get $5 off your first order at magicspoon.com/bears. We'll have a link in the comments and in the description as well. That's magicspoon.com/bears. Go ahead and get back in the cereal game with Magic Spoon. Let's continue our Bears rumors roundup. A lot of trade discussion to get into. Did the Raiders want Khalil Mack back this offseason? This is also going to be for Smoking Jay's bear down because Vic Tafur of The Athletic reports that the Raiders called the Bears about acquiring Mack, or I should say reacquiring Mack, this offseason before free agency. The Bears reportedly had no interest in trading Mack. The Raiders ended up settling for Yannick Ngakoue in free agency. Obviously, the Bears traded for Mack from the Raiders just a few years ago, back in 2018. I find this very interesting that the Raiders supposedly tried to bring him back. Obviously, Vegas' defense struggled a year ago, so I understand why they want to acquire top talent, but maybe you shouldn't trade a generational talent in the first place. Which, speaking of which, why don't we revisit that trade from 2018? The Bears got Khalil Mack, a second-round pick, which turned to Cole Kmet. I think that's worked out pretty well. I think it'll continue to work out. Arlington Hambright was the seventh-round pick, which, hey, I mean, depth offensive lineman, not bad for round 7. Raiders obviously got a pair of first-round picks. Josh Jacobs, solid player. Damon Arnett, not so much. A sixth-round pick for a guy I've never even heard of. And then Brian Edwards, who the jury is still out on him. I think this confirms the Bears officially won the Khalil Mack trade. I think it was already pretty clear. Typically, when a generational talent gets traded, the team that gets that player wins the trade. But based on who the Raiders have been able to select with those picks and the fact that they're already trying to trade back for Khalil Mack, I think that just even solidifies it further that the Bears won the Khalil Mack trade, and I don't really think it's all that close. Who do you guys think won the trade? Type B for Bears, type R for Raiders. Get your votes in down in the comments. Come on, type your Bs. I think we all know that Chicago won this trade, even though it hasn't necessarily turned into a Super Bowl or something like that. Hey, subscribe to the channel. We'll be live tomorrow like we are every single Tuesday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central Time. Make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. We'll continue to bring you the latest Bears news, rumors, and join us for our live mailbags, which we hit on Tuesdays, where you guys can submit your questions. Subscribe, youtube.com/BearsNow. More trade discussion. Nick Foles, could he get traded to the Falcons? Go to Smoking Jays. People are talking on this one, and obviously Atlanta is in major need of a backup quarterback. It was already dicey behind Matt Ryan with AJ McCarron and Felipe Franks. Well, now you've lost McCarron to a torn ACL. He's done for the year. So the UDFA Franks is the only other quarterback on the roster, and to put it nicely, he's been a disaster in the preseason. And obviously from Chicago's side of things, they would like to trade Nick Foles and clear that cap space and clear a roster spot, because cutting him isn't really an option, because it creates more dead cap than it would if you traded him and saved that $4 million, which we have discussed quite a bit. There's some chatter because the Falcons reportedly are shopping to see what's out there, whether in free agency or on the trade market. But I think this makes sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, Falcons need a reliable backup. They don't have that in Felipe Franks. Number two, there's 2 coaches on Atlanta's staff that was on the Bears staff last year. Dave Ragone, who was the passing game coordinator for Chicago a year ago, and Charles London, who was on staff as well. 2 offensive coaches that are on the Falcons staff now, so there's some familiarity there. I think Nick Foles' skill set is somewhat similar to Matt Ryan, so you wouldn't have to, completely change the playbook if Foles had to play. And just to simply put it, Felipe Franks ain't it. Like, he's just not the answer. Good athlete, he can run, but very erratic throwing the football, can't process what defenses are doing. He's more of a practice squad guy than a backup NFL quarterback. I fully expect Atlanta to upgrade at backup quarterback. Now, whether or not that's going to be Nick Foles, that remains to be seen. But obviously the Bears have moved on from Foles in the sense that he will not take another snap for Chicago, barring a disaster, right? Like Dalton gets hurt or something like that, and Fields either isn't ready or he gets hurt as well. That's the only scenario where Nick Foles is under center for this team again in a regular season game. So this could be a win-win scenario. Atlanta gets a reliable backup, and the Bears get to clear that roster spot because they're going to have to carry him on the 53 at this point, and they clear $4 million in salary cap space, and maybe they spend that money elsewhere either on an offensive lineman or maybe even a cornerback. So what do you guys think? Will the Bears trade Nick Foles before week 1? Type T for trade, type K for keep. I think they want to trade him. Will it actually happen, though? I'd say it's still 50-50. That's why Two Smoking Jay's not only on a trade to the Falcons, but just a trade in general, because his contract is a bit tricky to move on from. Speaking of bad contracts, Robert Quinn, could he get traded to the Jets? I almost went fake news, but I'll throw one Smoking Jay. I think it's at least slightly possible because the Jets have a lot of cap space still. But Jacob Infante, who does some Bears blogging, threw this idea out there. Obviously, the Jets lost Carl Lawson for the season to a torn Achilles, and the report is that they are looking to trade for a defensive end, a vet type of player that could help fill that void, which Robert Quinn does fit that mold, a vet who's got some good pass rushing ability. The problem is his contract is just bad. Like, it's just a bad contract. That's why I'm only going one Smoking Jay. I can't say that it's super likely to happen at the end of the day, but obviously, if it did happen, it would clear up a ton of cap space for the Chicago Bears, which is what Jacob Infante noted here, that it would save over $11 million this year, almost $13 million next year, which obviously, hey, Robert Quinn has not come close to living up to that contract. Maybe a guy like Travis Gibson could get more opportunities. He's looked good in the preseason. Maybe Charles Snowden makes the team in this scenario. Trading Quinn would be clutch, just from a financial standpoint. I think he'll play better this year, but man, he's bad against the run. That 4th and 1 play against Buffalo was just brutal, a brutal rep for him, and he just hasn't been the same player since the Bears gave him that $70 million contract with $30 million guaranteed. So if you could trade him, that would be very, very clutch on your books and just in general, because I think some younger guys might even be better anyway, if we're being completely honest. I think Jeremiah Tachu's a nice vet. Travis Gibson is a guy who has shown a lot of pop here in year number 2 in the preseason. I like Charles Snowden's potential, so if you could get Quinn off your books, sign me up for that. I don't think the Jets will do it. I don't know if there's mutual interest there on that front, but that's where we are. I thought it was an interesting idea, so I wanted to at least throw it out there. Now, again, I expect Quinn to be in Chicago, so if he is, hopefully he plays well. How many sacks will he have this year? Only had 2 a year ago. I mean, 5, 6, can you get 6 sacks out of Robert Quinn? I mean, he's never going to live up to that contract, but if he can at least be a solid pass rusher, that would certainly help. Get your votes in. How many sacks for Quinn this year? All right, some injury news to get into, and then we will wrap up the show. Germain Ifedi has been activated off the PUP list. He did practice today. It was a non-padded practice for Chicago, but really good sign to see him out there. Matt Nagy sounded like Ifedi would play this Saturday in the final preseason game, which will be good for whichever quarterbacks do play. Dalton, Fields, Foles, if he gets into the game. He probably wouldn't play with the starters, obviously. But a good sign to get Germain Ifedi back, because this offensive line has been anemic. It's been a disaster during the preseason. So to get some of these guys who are projected to start back is very, very good. You get Ifedi back. Jason Peters was out there at practice today as well. He's going to play in the preseason finale. James Daniels, the offensive guard, also returned to practice today. So those are 3 potential starters, and Peters, Ifedi, and Daniels all returning. Other guys who returned to practice today as well. I mentioned Daniels there. Eddie Goldman at nose tackle. He's back at practice. That's a good sign. Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith, both your starting linebackers that did not play on Saturday. I think they were both severely missed against Buffalo. But there are guys that are out as well. Javon Wims dealing with an oblique injury. Jesper Horsted out with the knee. Scooter Harrington, knee. Pat Scales, ankle. Bilal Nichols is sidelined with a toe injury. That's a notable one because he's probably going to play a big role in this team. Matt Nagy says should be good to go for week 1. They're just playing it safe. Mike Pennel dealing with a groin injury today. Sam Kamara with an ankle. And then Jordan Lucas dealing with a quad injury. So some guys returning, but some guys out as well. Last little piece of news here. Bears sign Isaiah Coulter, 2020 5th-round pick out of Rhode Island. Played 1 game with the Texans last year, was in and out of their roster a year ago. They bring him on board. 6'2", 200. I saw Justin Fields throw a touchdown pass to him today on a deep ball. Has some speed, and maybe can push for a roster spot with some special teams value. We'll have to wait and see. That's all for today's show. Make sure you subscribe. We'll be live tomorrow, 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central Time here on the show, youtube.com/BearsNow. Tell your friends, and we will see you tomorrow afternoon.